This is the final word channel where fulfilled Messianic prophecy is kept at the vital center of the faith of Messiah Jesus. Now, Luke 9:26. Whoever is ashamed of me and my words, of him the Son of Man will be ashamed when he comes in his glory and the glory of the Father and of the holy angels. Now, he starts in the first person, me, my words. Then he stops saying I. He says the Son of Man and he and his glory. So, who is the Son of Man? Is he naming himself or naming somebody else? And if he is naming himself, why reach for that title at the exact moment he speaks of the coming? Here is what I am after in this study. Son of Man is not one more name for the person of Christ, which is how it is nearly always taught. And that teaching is what leaves this verse defenseless. So defenseless that other people pick it up and turn it into a prophecy of a later prophet. The phrase is a citation out of the written record. And the split in that sentence is not two persons. It is two kinds of revelation that cannot be pulled apart. So the parallel passages. Mark 8:38, Matthew 16:27, Luke 12:8 through 9, and Matthew 10:32 through 33. And so here's the problem itself. Because it's not just one odd verse here. This third person habit runs all through the synoptics. Mark 2, so that you may know the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. And then, without a breath, I say to you, get up and take your bed. Matthew 8, foxes have holes and the birds have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head, said to a man who had just offered to follow him. Luke 19, in the tax collector's house, the Son of Man came to seek and save that which was lost, explaining what he had personally just done. Mark 14, at the table, the Son of Man goes as it is written of him. But woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. And in the garden, Judas, would you betray the Son of Man with a kiss? The kiss landing on his cheek as he says it. Now, nobody thinks a second man is in view in any of those. That is exactly what makes the third person a problem. The same title, the same construction, no marker of any kind, also turns up in sentences about a figure arriving on clouds with angels. And there, the third person suddenly looks like it might be doing real work. He never explains the switch. He uses Son of Man about 80 times and leaves it standing every time. Now, how Christians have answered it. The answer the church has given and where it breaks. The phrase Son of Man has three homes in the Hebrew scriptures. In Psalms 8 and Numbers 23, Son of Man means a mortal creature, precisely not God. In Ezekiel, Son of Man is a form of address, 90 times over, marking a man under commission, handed a message sent to a people who will not listen. And in Daniel 7, Son of Man is a figure, one like a Son of Man coming in the clouds, given dominion and glory and a kingdom, all nations serving him, a rule that never passes away. Three streams for one phrase, pointing in different directions. Now, the standard Christian answer takes the first one. Son of Man is his humanity. Son of God is his deity, and the two make a tidy matched pair. That was not chosen because the evidence favors it. It was chosen because it teaches well. And that answer fails in 4 places at once. It cuts Son of Man off from Daniel 7, the one text most obviously standing behind the usage. It leaves the pronoun shift in Luke 9:26 with no function. So the switch gets waved off as idiom, which concedes there is no mystery in the title at all. It puts nothing on the table that anyone outside the church can check. And this is the one that matters. If Son of Man names the humanity, then the coming Son of Man is a man who comes. And so it passes into other hands. Watch what happens to that last sentence once it leaves our hands. Take that premise. The coming Son of Man is a man who comes, and put a name in the slot. That is the Islamic argument, and it's simple. The second figure is the prophet who came after, Muhammad. Jesus was pointing ahead to someone else, and Christians have spent 2,000 years reading a forward-pointing prophecy as a self-description. That argument usually comes paired with the paraclete passages in John. The Muslim reading is not built on a mistranslation. It is not built on a variant reading. It is built on a real feature of the text joined to an interpretation of the title that we supplied. The critic is not misreading the gospel. He is reading our gloss accurately. 2 things break that reading. First, the same speaker in the same Gospels says over and over that the Son of Man must be handed over, killed, and raised on the 3rd day. So the coming prophet is the one who gets crucified and walks out of a tomb. And Islam denies the crucifixion outright. The reading has to lift a title out of a book while refusing what the book says happens to the man who holds it. Second, Daniel 7:14 out loud, all nations serving him, a dominion that will not pass away. And the argument cannot even be formed because no monotheist assigns those words to a prophet. So the charge against us is not that we drew the conclusion. We supplied the premise and it left the door unlocked. Now, the text settles the referent. The Gospels themselves, which never had this problem. Luke 5, so that you may know the Son of Man has authority to forgive sins, and the paralyzed man gets up in front of them. Luke 9:22, 4 verses before our sentence, the Son of Man must suffer, be killed, and be raised on the 3rd day. Luke 12:8 says the Son of Man will acknowledge. Matthew 10:32 gives the same sayings as I will acknowledge. The title and the pronoun trading places between 2 writers. Matthew 16 has him ask who people say the Son of Man is. Luke has that same question as who do the crowds say that I am? In John 9, he asked the man born blind, do you believe in the Son of Man? The man asks who that is. Jesus answers him, you have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you. Then in the trial, asked outright whether he is the Messiah, he answers with the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power, and they convict him for it. If he were announcing somebody else's arrival, there is no charge. Predicting a future prophet is not a blasphemy. His judges had no third person problem. They knew exactly who he meant, and they killed him for it. Now, the prophets already speak this way, and the grammar is older than the Gospels. In Zechariah 12, God is the speaker, and he says, "They will look on me whom they pierced, and they shall mourn for him." The first person and the third person, one verse, one figure. Malachi 3, I send my messenger to prepare the way before me, and then the Lord whom you seek will suddenly come to his temple. The speaker is the one being come to, and the coming one is named in the third person inside the speaker's own sentence. That is how the prophets talk when God enters history. The split in Luke 9:26 is not a seam, and it is not a defect. It is a signature. Now, the title is a citation. This brings us to what the title actually is. Son of Man is a quotation. It comes out of Daniel 7, the figure who rides the clouds, which is what God does, and holds everlasting dominion, which is what God has. So when Jesus reaches for the phrase, he is not describing himself. He is pointing to a document and standing inside it at the same time. That is why the grammar changes at that exact spot. The first clause is the man speaking. The second is the record speaking. And they are the same person. And now the two prophetic streams come together. Ezekiel names the man who stands under the word. Daniel names the figure the word specifies. Jesus takes both at once. He is the one carrying the message and the one the message is about. The title never named a nature. It names him in his prophetic office and his prophetic content together, just as revelation in the whole prophetic corpus, which he realizes. So what is done to the word? If the Son of Man names the written record as much as it names the man, then what is done to him is done to the record as well. Please listen closely to what I'm about to say. The complaint comes fast here. A word cannot suffer. A word cannot be ashamed. But look at what the scriptures say is done to the word. Jeremiah writes a scroll, and the king cuts it apart with a knife and feeds it to the fire, column by column. In the parable, the servants sent with the message are beaten and murdered one after another. And then the son. Amos says a famine is coming, not of bread, but of hearing the words of the Lord. Then the third day, Luke reports 2 risings, not 1. There is the empty tomb in the morning, and on the road that afternoon, beginning with Moses and all the prophets. He opens the scriptures to them. That evening, he opens their minds. The written witness comes out of the ground on the same day the body does. And the record does not go back to what it was. It goes out into more hands and more languages than it had ever reached. And the preaching that follows is prophecy exposition almost end to end. One guard on that. The word did not rise instead of him. It rose because he did. Trade the body for an idea, and there is nothing left that anyone can check. Now, 2 kinds of revelation. So here is the whole of it. And this is what Luke 9:26 is doing. He is not saying there are two persons. He is saying there are two kinds of revelation, and they do not come apart. One of them has a face and a voice and is standing in front of the crowd. The other has been written for centuries and is sitting in the scrolls down the street. The old teaching was right that there is lowliness in that title. It was wrong about what the lowliness is. It is God in humility at a datable time under a named governor in a body that could be arrested and killed. And it is for something. A specification cannot be fulfilled in general. It has to be fulfilled somewhere on a date in public where the text can be laid beside the event and checked by anyone who wants to. The human form is what makes the record checkable. And the shame is not a feeling. It means refusing to be publicly attached to someone. A record can stand against a man. A witness statement can fail to have his name anywhere in it. Nobody has to burn a scroll to deny the record. It is enough never to open it. Now look, here's the weight of all this. One last thing, and it carries everything. Almost nobody keeps the record and drops the person. The failure always runs the other way. We keep the person and we let the revelation go. And what is left is a relationship that cannot be shown to be wrong, which sounds like strength and is not. A person who is also a fulfilled record can be examined by anyone on earth. A person held apart from the record can only be felt. That is what is writing on those three words, Son of Man. Sincerity can be manufactured by any community that has ever existed. Experience can be manufactured. Crowds can be manufactured. What cannot be manufactured is a description set down centuries early by dozens of unrelated hands who never met. A figure who comes with the clouds and holds a dominion that does not end. And then a man in Galilee who takes that phrase as his own name, is executed for it, and comes out of the grave on the day the record said he would. He was not handing us a title here. He was telling us where to look. Ashamed of me and of my words, the person and the speech, named in one breath, and one answer covers both. Hold the person without the word, and there is no ground under the faith at all, only feeling. And feeling has never proved anything to anyone. Hold them together, and the ground is a document the Word has had in its hands for 2,500 years, open on the table, waiting to be read against the life it described. Next time, the coming itself, the glory, the angels, and what Daniel 7 says happens at that arrival.